supposed to be out there.
It's one you back there.
I'm like, earlier the better, I'll figure something out. So then he pushed it to 8:30 Friday morning. Alright, I got to smooth it over with her, of course. So I did. So we get there at 8:30. And he
We'll call this regular committee of the whole meeting to order on Tuesday, October 29, 2019 at 7 p.m. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have anyone that would like to speak on the pledge of recitation? Okay. Moving down to the GO bonds. Chuck.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we talked about this briefly a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the first ordinance connected to this bond issue. This is the only bond issue for which we have a tax levy, and it's a continuing series. We've done this every 3 years for I don't know how many years before I was here. And we are kind of at the end of the cycle from the previous bond issue, which was in 2017. Actually, we began work on it late in 2016 and received the funds from it in January of 2017. So we're just about to that 3-year mark. Final payment for that will be due on December 1st of this year. And I'd like to introduce Mr. John Vizzetti of Bernardi Securities, as the bond underwriter, and has worked with us on several other bonds, including the IEPA loan refinancing, which saved us about $81,000 when we did that in 2014, I guess it was. And also with the last, as I said, with the 2017 general obligation bond, and also with the bond that we used to finance the restoration and construction of the building that is now our police station. We issued those. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Vizzetti.
Thank you, Chuck. Starting to wonder why I showed up here tonight after giving that description there. But
Sorry.
you're getting good at that, Chuck. But all kidding aside, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Again, I'm John Vizzetti with Bernardi Securities. As Chuck had mentioned, we had helped the city with the last 4 bond issues, getting all the way back to 2014, and here this evening helping you with the continuation of your GO capital bond issue, as we like to call it. Again, this is a zero tax rate increase bond issue. It's a continuation of the levy that has been in place for the city for a number of years. It's typically been issued for about a 2 or 3 year time frame. Again, that's no different than what you've done in the past. Interest rates, as a whole, are still relatively low. They've been that way for a number of years now. The city took advantage of that back in 2018 when you financed the police station. But as far as this bond issue is concerned, we're looking at interest rates right around 2 to 2.25% or so. Okay, and that's a fixed interest rate, which is dramatically less than what you borrowed at in 2014, and then again in 2017 with the same type of bond issue. Later this week, Mr. Conzo and I will be getting on a conference call to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's with respect to this issuance. And as Chuck had mentioned, this is the 3rd step in a 3-step process. You're rounding third base. We'll get to home here in the middle of November after that conference call is concluded. We'll price the bonds in mid-November and have the funds in your bank account come early to mid-December. Barring any unforeseen events that occur, such as a crisis in the Middle East or who tweets what at 3 a.m. Kind of, the market is very volatile right now, if you follow me. But we're expecting calm waters going forward. And again, wanted to be here tonight to answer any questions anyone may have about this process or anything associated with it.
Any questions?
Drove from Ottawa to be here, so
Please ask one.
at least one, yeah.
Sure.
Jeff.
It is going to snow tonight, so you're going to ask me that.
Or this might be a question for Chuck or someone else also, but our next step is to put this ordinance before us after it's been edited a little bit or something. That we put that on the agenda, or how does that?
Yes, it would, it's a parameters ordinance and, yeah, it's in the packet.
Right.
It would be placed on the agenda for next vote meeting. If that is the.
Or-
So we saved about, what'd you say, Chuck, 81,000?
Right, and I know this goes back a long ways. In 2004, we had an IEPA loan for the upgrade of the sewer facility. Actually, it was the second one, there was one before that, but this was a substantial one. And we, halfway through that, the bond rates had dropped so low that it was actually cheaper to refinance it through issuing those bonds 2014 than it was to continue with the IEPA loan. IEPA loan would have been paid in its entirety in 2024. This bond will that we have now for that purpose will be paid in that same year, but the savings to us in interest on that was about $81,000.
So John, do you see another way to save the city another 81,000?
No, we're working on it.
Well, you're putting me on the spot now. There is a bond that was issued, roughly 5-6 years ago. That's gonna reach a point in time where I think you can save money by refinancing it. Bonds, unlike a mortgage, typically can't be paid off at any, given point in time. They're issued with an 8 to 9 to a 10-year call feature, optional redemption feature, which allows you the opportunity then 8, 9, 10 years from the time you issue them to get in the market and refinance if markets are favorable. Again, unlike a mortgage where you could simply pay off that mortgage the next day. So the bonds that were issued in 2013 for the portion of it for the theater project, are on the horizon of which we're looking at to see if and when it may be feasible to refinance and get into the market and issue bonds at a lesser rate, just like we did in 2014. But we're just not to that point in time yet where it's favorable economically to do that. But again, it is on the horizon. Chuck and I have spoken about it a couple of months ago, and it is something we could look at doing possibly in about 1.5 or 2 years from now.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the call feature is 8 years on that, isn't it?
It is, so 2021 or 22, so we're getting close.
Further questions? Place this on the agenda? Get this on the regular agenda? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Now we had Crawford, Murphy and Chili's 2019 standard agreement for professional services to be effective January 1st, 2020.
So we'll start and say it's not for January the 1st, 2020. It's a new contract for an issue that has arisen out at the wastewater treatment plant. When we looked at the county's GIS data for the property corners, there was a lot of inconsistencies. And before we start construction out there, we need to truly know what property the city owns so that we can set those corners and know that we're not getting on someone else's property. And so in doing that, we need to get some title work done, and we need to make sure that we truly understand what ownership and what easements and legally what access we have to the property at the site and around the site. And that's what that's for.
Mr. Welch and I were out there walking around last night. It is a very irregular site. It's not square, it's not triangle, it's so I agree with her. It's hard to tell where Lincoln Lakes property starts, where ours starts, and there's private individuals' property within close proximity. So we do need to go more than just the GIS site. We need to find the true corners out there so that we can figure out where we're working, because it's a very irregular shaped property.
Yeah, and giving a little context to this also, this really came up because Christy and I have had conversations about access to the site for the project, the upgrade project that's going to happen. And anybody that's been out there towards Lincoln Lakes knows that we're right on the edge of their road. After several conversations with the association, they're just not comfortable with that big of a project being on that private road which they pay to maintain. So we started looking at other options on how we could access our site without accessing their property to do so. And that's when we started realizing that it's quite a mess out there, and it's not clear who owns what just by simply looking at GIS. We've actually learned a couple other things we didn't know about what the city owns out there and what we don't. But also this, just to be clear, this is a not to exceed $16,000 cost
Correct.
for their work. There will be no formal plats or legal descriptions of the boundaries produced.
Correct. We're gonna mark the corners so that everyone knows what the limits are of the property. Maybe more than one corner, because actually it looks like on some stuff we found, the building that's in front, they built outside their property, so the property actually juts out and goes around their building. So we just need to clarify exactly where that's at overall. And going forward, that'll help us in the future as well to know exactly what's owned and what isn't owned.
Questions or discussion?
And we are using the title company here in town, so.
Is this on the regular agenda? Yeah,
Well, what would be the official,
can you say for professional services?
right?
To locate the property lines on South Cape
Perfect.
Street, not to exceed
Yes.
$16,000.
Perfect.
Next on the regular agenda.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you. Next, we have an update from Mr. Puckett from Lincoln Community High School.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm the LTIC director, Matt Puckett. I'm over the building trades and all the career center programs we have at Lincoln High School. It's the LTIC program, so Lincoln High School is part of it along with 6 other schools. And right now we're building a house on 1704 Pekin Street off of the 3 lots the city gave us 2 years ago. We sold the 1702 house 2 years ago, and we have an agreement with Habitat for Humanity to go back and forth with them every year. Currently, while we have these lots, eventually we'll probably go with Habitat every single year when we run out of lots, or the city has any more lots to give us or whatever, just depending on how it goes. Sometimes people will lots to us. It's happened in other places and things. But one of the things that we were looking at with the last house that we had, we lost funds on. We lost about $20,000 on that house. It's okay if I pass this out. Pass it out. We keep track of every one of the expenses. We have a certain expense count at the school for every single expense we have. And basically we add up all those expenses at the very end. And then we have a sealed bid process by whoever gets the house. The last time we advertised the house and everything, we only had one bidder. That bidder was the winning bidder, Ms. Linda Maxey, who currently resides in the house in 1702 Pekin Street. Once everybody gets it, I'll kind of explain what they're looking at. I kind of show. But our plan, if we would like to, if all possible, we've had some people interested in wanting to purchase the house now, as it's in stage of completion. I think we're about 40 to 50% done. Every day a little bit more gets done onto it. We can't really stop. I'm not stopping the whole process. We're going to keep rocking and rolling with it. But our thought process is to, if somebody was interested in it, wanted to buy it early and take over all the expenses for it, that way we wouldn't be landing out any money at the very end. Now, granted, not everybody has a copy. The first thing that you'll see here is our account activity statement. This is directly off of Lincoln High School's books, our software books. And the very back page, you'll see on page 8, where you'll see where I circled $120,127.40, which is what we spent on the house in 1702 Pekin Street. And you'll see the next thing I gave is a sealed bid that was the winning bid for $97,399. So we've lost one. And granted, we've had the building trades program since the 1940s at Lincoln High School, maybe even earlier than that, but that's about how far I've been able to trace it back to. I think it's been part of LTEC since 1967 when it was originally created. Up until the 2000s, we made money on houses. I think we made very good money on houses doing things, but as the economy has kind of taken downfall in some cases, we have not been able to, we've been barely able to break even, if not we've lost money on the last several houses we've had. So in any time in a situation where I can get a scenario where we can break even, that is when I'm under direction of my LTEC board and with the high school boards to break even, and so we don't lose money on the house. Now, I'd also like to point out that this does not include the teacher's salary or transportation cost of the students to go there. This is just strictly materials that we spend on the house. The city's building permit that we pay for and the other permits that we pay for and stuff. So what I'm kind of requesting and asking of the city is permission to be able to sell this house before we have it completed by sealed bid process to anybody who's interested. And the way the sealed bid process goes, it's been a year since I refreshed, I need to refresh myself up on the law, but we open it up, when we have somebody who's interested, or we have people who have told us they have interest, we open up the sealed bid process. If nobody bids on the house, then we're at that point in time, we're able to go to a realtor and list it with a realtor at that point. Because that's always been our fallback, and it hasn't been done before. But usually we have one or two, somebody comes in with one bid or two bids and usually gets the house. But we haven't, like I said, we haven't had a lot of bids. Like the last bid was just one bid and that was it. So that's kind of where I'm kind of at. On the last page I gave our plan that we agreed with Habitat for Humanity, what our plan was. If everything goes okay, we're planning, like I said, next year we'll go back to Habitat for Humanity, build a house with them, and then we'll try to build a house on that last lot. That last lot is significantly smaller, so we're kind of trying to figure out what type of house to build on it. It's kind of a different shape. If anybody driven by the 1704 Pekin Street, cruising town in the middle of the night, middle of the day or whatever. So, and it's the house we're building right now is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage house, about 1,700 square feet. Just a standard house. It is one of the things we did correct with this house that we did the other house, we thought the rooms in our last house were a little bit smaller than we would like. So we made these rooms a little bit bigger to make it easier to sell. And it's open concept. And once again, if anybody's bored, I'd like to come out and see it, come on out. We don't have any doors in the place, so you can actually come out in the afternoon and walk through it if you'd like to. So there's nothing stopping you.
There's several questions I know. We'll start with Ron, Steve, and Kevin.
So, thank you for coming forward. So the amount you gave is 1702 that was built was 120,000, and so obviously you cannot say probably what the amount would be for the house that's currently being built under 1704.
This is a stick home, so we go by what the costs are, and construction costs vary. Sometimes we're able to get things cheaper. We're trying to get in around 110 on this one. We had a few expenses on the last house that we didn't even think we would even have, but we had to run electricity out there special because there was no electricity there. We had to run, if anybody's familiar with it, the first couple of months that we were building the house in 1702, we ran it with a generator, because it was a nice little fun game between lawyers and trying to figure out how to get electricity running out there. We had to run some different things. We had to cut into the street to get water and stuff of that nature, and we paid for all that stuff. So we're hoping, once again, if I can get it as low as possible, I will. My directive to my contractor who's teaching the class, John Ford, if anyone's familiar with him, Ford Construction in Atlanta. We're trying to get it build as cheaply as possible. Our goal with LTEC is not to make money. I mean, it's not, I'm a school, that's my thought process. My thing is to break even. That's the directive I am. And every student that comes to our school, and this individual school pays tuition dollars to that school, to me, excuse me. So like Lincoln High School, kids working on my LTEC program, they pay my school, my LTEC school, basically for out there. So if I lose money, that comes out of my school budget. So that's another reason why I'm just trying to break even and just limit the risk. Now there is a risk, there is a scenario too, if we built a house and all of a sudden somebody comes in and wants to offer us $20,000 or $30,000 more for the house than what we got, well, you're right, we would lose out on that. But at the same time I don't know if that's the case. And my thing is to protect my budget and to protect my school from a $20,000 or $30,000 hit. So if somebody was able to come in, I'd hedge my bets and say, hey, take it over, let's rock and roll. I can't imagine them kicking us off the site since we're not charging labor. And we have a licensed contractor doing the job right now. I mean, he's built houses all over Lincoln and Atlanta and in McLean County. So if they wanted us off the site, that's fine. As I said in an email to the mayor, I mean, I got other jobs around the high school and around the community I can start working on tomorrow, but I don't think anybody would do that. I think more than likely they would say, hey, please continue the job. And with that scenario, they can choose what color they want the siding, what kitchen appliances they want in there. They can have all this done ahead of time. Because if I build the house completely, then I'm going to choose all these things. And what most people today, including my own wife, we go into a brand new house and she's wanting to paint different walls and different stuff. Well, people can do this right off the bat and we'll do it for them. So that's what the advantage is of selling it early, somebody buying it early. They can get it exactly how they want it.
Steve?
So is there a minimum bid that you guys, let's say you had a bid of 80,000 on this and it was only one bid, do you have to sell it for 80, or can you say the bid has to meet a minimum amount? That way you wouldn't have lost 20. I know.
Oh, you're right. We can set a reserve amount on there. One of the things that we worried about when we were selling the house the last time is that if we put 110,000, will we get even one bid? So, in conjunction with the LTED board, and the superintendent of Lincoln High School is our board president. At the time, that was Mr. Bob Bagby. His thought process was we need to keep it underneath 100,000 to get people interested in taking a look, and then they might bid it up from that point on. We knew when we got into this scenario, we would probably lose money because of the extra expenses we had in putting the house in there in that area. But yes, we can set the reserve to whatever it is. I mean, and I have to kind of, if we decided tomorrow, somebody came up to me tomorrow and said, hey, Mr. Puckett, we're interested and we want to buy that house. Okay. And I tell them about the sealed bid process and said, I'm ready to go right now. And I could set a minimum of what my minimum would be, and that would be whatever my expenses were in the house at this time. The bad problem with that is I have to give a 2 or 3 week notice to that, so I can't spend any more money on that house unless I lose that money while I build that house. I mean, because if we want to keep moving. Now, what I would probably do is try to estimate whatever expenses I would need for the next 3 weeks and put it into that bid process to try to limit the damage as much as possible. But yes, I can set a reserve amount to answer your question on exactly what it is. And if they don't meet the reserve amount, then they don't get the house.
Okay.
Well, basically, what Steve said and what you just said was what I was going to ask. Obviously, you can't change the past, but the reserve. If you were at 120, the reserve should have been much higher on the first house. Personally, I'd like to see you finish this one, or as you just said, if you've got somebody interested, you need to set the higher than what you are in it and continue working on the house.
That's what we would do.
After that, I would give it to a realtor, and because by putting it in a bid, you're only taking local bids. Where if a realtor has it, it's being showcased across, a much larger area. And being a brand new house, I don't.
Well, just at the same time, this is coming out of my budget, and of course we're on yearly budgets and things of that nature. The difference between Lincoln High School is a lot more reserve fund and a very small reserve fund. Because once again, it's never set up to be a money-making operation. If I wait until it's completely completed before I put it out there, then it would be probably about June 1st before we would get it completed. I mean, 100%. I mean, that's considering no snow days, no other issues of those natures. And we would be missing the spring season, which I believe spring is the best time to be buying a house. If I'm correct, sir, you're probably the expert.
No comment.
Yeah, I mean, having a little background in real estate, obviously, I mean, the market in Lincoln, Logan County usually moves all the time.
Okay.
And the thing is, when I see this, and I obviously am in real estate, I didn't even know that the house was available for sealed bids. So that's, I feel like, a big problem, because there are a lot of buyers out there. And a home, just saying it, I mean, like that 700 square feet, the new house should be selling for over 150. You know what I mean? So you're way undercutting yourself on these homes. They're just not known in the area. You know, so just looking out for you, not from real estate, you know, I mean, the house that sold for 96 probably would have sold for over 150. You know, because I've sold a lot of homes in one.
Would you like to guarantee that one?
I mean, I'm just
I'm
saying,
open.
from
You want to sign some
no,
money
I mean,
tonight? I'm going.
a new house for $96,000 is unheard of, you know. in the
Well,
area,
and
so.
but I mean, at the same time, I mean, granted, our Facebook presence at the high school was not as good 2 years ago as it is right now. Mr. Helms doing an outstanding job increasing that visibility out there, and we did advertise it in the paper. And with the sealed bid process, we're kind of limited in what all we can do. I mean, versus going around and putting flyers on people's doors, I guess, not to fix it, which I could do. I mean, we're kind of limited in what.
How did you say they set the sealed bid amount?
It was just a decision between me and the superintendent on what we were guessing what it would take. And this is also past experience that he had had at the time with other houses. We've had other houses, and once again, the house, some of the houses we've sold ahead of time, like the house on 165 Half Moon, was donated to us by Mr. Rickard. Mr. Rickard, I believe it is. He was a teacher there at Lincoln High School for several years, and we remodeled it. We had some people come interested in it. We sold it in December, and they were able to finish out the remodels that they wanted. Some other houses that we bought that were foreclosures before that, according to the superintendent at the time, we lost 10 to 15,000 on each one of those houses. And once again, I don't know anything. Once again, I'm an administrator. I'm just trying to protect my budgets and stuff and historical analysis of what we've sold these things for versus what we have. I mean, if you think we can sell it for 150,000, I'm all game for it, but I'm also at the same time that's a big risk. I mean, if I screw up my budget, I might not have a job.
Just to remind the council, via the contract, these properties were conveyed for a very nominal fee, if anything at all. I think it was $1. These lots could have been sold as lots. The city could have generated a profit there. Instead, they were given for educational purposes, I believe, but also potentially maybe to turn a profit as well, because after expenses, any profits were to be shared by the city and, I believe, the high school.
Yes.
So there's also that to consider as well when setting a reserve amount or proceeding to be a realtor.
Steve and Tracy, I think.
I was just gonna ask, is there a reason why you're doing a sealed bill,
That's required by, that's what, as I have been told, is required by law.
And what they did in the past is they would list it with the Board of Realtors president, and that would give exposure to the whole market, and they would collect offers from any realtor until they got what they wanted. And that was like the Sherman Street homes, you probably all remember that. I remember because I was following a realtor at the time, they would list those with the Board of Realtors president, so that not one realtor had the listing, but all realtors had exposure to sell it, and it got them top dollar. You know, those homes sold for 130, and value's only gone up. So, you know, similar size. So just some background, you know.
I'm under direction of my board tonight. It's I'm just looking at if we have offers and opportunities to do it.
Right.
But at the same time is if the city council wants me to wait till the very end, that's your guys' decision for me to do that. I just hope at the very end I don't lose 20.
As I say, I just think nobody here wants to see the high school losing $20,000, you know, when you can get more. So I think that's where they're all, you know. Tracy?
Thank you, Mayor. So I was actually going to ask the same questions or make those statements that the city attorney did. When those parcels of land, I understand that you have a budget to protect, but we also have a budget to protect here and assets to the city. In the same breath, the educational opportunity was the reason why we went into this joint partnership. But I'm sure that there was some profit that was on the minds of the individuals that made that decision as well, because the land was given basically at no cost And while we're still receiving tax revenue from them, there's no money recouped to the city to pay for that cost of the land, so it's gone. Regarding the second house, I would rather see you break even than take another loss, because that's a loss to the city, it's a loss to the high school and any parent that has a child in this community. So definitely want you to break even. Regarding the third house, I think we probably should have a conversation about where we head with that third house before you embark on that journey, though, so that we don't fall into some of these same pitfalls.
Well, and I was following when we built the first house, I followed when I did the second house, the same process I did with the first house. However, I did know some of my expenses would be lower because the fact is some things that we didn't expect we were having to do. And also, I've always, because it has been past practice, if somebody came in at an earlier opportunity wanting to take on the house, we've always done that.
Yep.
As far as the expense of the city, I mean, I was always told that the city was asking us to take these lots on, to build a house on them. So I thought, it's great for both of us because I need lots to build for my building trades program. And the city needs to offload these, so we can get some tax revenue and not be mowing it for the next 30 years if we didn't sell it outright. So I thought that was a win-win for everybody. And as far as the educational opportunity, we plan to finish building the house. I mean, we're building the house with zero labor costs whatsoever. The only thing would be is that somebody taking on the material costs. But as far as making money on any of the houses, to my knowledge, since I've been director for the last 5 years, we have never made money on the houses. And before that, according to the superintendent, and I'm just going by word of mouth, I don't have any documentation to prove any of this, we haven't made money on these houses in years.
So then I would ask, not to cut you off, but I would ask the question why we entered into an agreement that said that we would split the profits 50-50. If we knew there was no profits to be had, that would have been a completely different story.
Well,
that's why I think we need to probably have a conversation about the third house. And it's okay to level set, and we've learned what has happened with the sale of these homes, but I don't want to put the mayor on the spot, but if he knows somebody within that industry who can help the high school out, certainly something we should look into, or you guys should.
I mean, I'm open to, once again, it's been a very valuable program to training young people and stuff of that nature. And like I said, I do know that when these lots were things, that Lincoln High School voted to take the lots on, I believe in April or May during a board meeting, and we didn't receive the contract from the city until it was almost like go time for us to be able to decide whether we're going to build on that lot or not. It was because there was multiple, we were just waiting, the wheels of democracy move slowly. So at the time when we got the contract, it was, I saw it there. I apologize for not coming back to the city at that point in time and saying, hey, but I went ahead and signed it because I was looking at it from, I'll share whatever I get out of the house. I have no problems with that. But if we haven't made any money, and I wasn't trying to hide, I apologize, I wasn't trying to hide anything at the time. I hope anybody was honest and open.
The high school may benefit from having, like an actual appraisal done on the house and then setting their reserve at that. Just something to keep in mind for Kevin and Gabby, I think.
Did you say in the beginning that someone has approached you about buying it unfinished?
I was told by our superintendent 2 weeks ago that he had heard of interest in the house, and when do we start the sealed bid process? And I said, the sealed bid process can start up at any time, as long as everybody agrees, and that's why I contacted Ms. Beth about, what's going on with this and but I don't know who it is, and I have to kind of stay as an independent arbiter as much as possible when it comes to sealed bid process. I don't really want to know. If somebody comes up and says they have interest and tells people that they have interest, then I ask, is it a good time to go ahead and launch the sealed bid process? And they say yes, and then I start moving on to doing that. But I try to stay out of, people are going to ask me how much I'm wanting for the house, what's going on, but I have as much as I possibly can become an independent arbiter, so that way no one can say that I was trying to give one person a bid over another person.
So, once again, when you do, say you would decide to sell it, just say, and have a bid before it's completed, again, would it be you and the superintendent that would arbitrarily decide on what would be a good price?
Well, yes, generally, I mean, but I will tell you right now, the price that I would set would be the amount of money I have in the house right now. I mean, that would be what it is, and estimating from when the sealed bid would be completed, I wouldn't have those next 2 weeks of expenses, and I could probably go ahead and purchase the things we would need for the next couple of weeks, so we wouldn't stop construction on the house. So it would be an estimate, and I'll estimate low, that way I wouldn't, it would be looking like I'd make any money off the house, I would be just selling it for whatever I had in it.
It just seems like, since your story of what you said had someone that knew about, like you said, it could have sold for much more money. If there was someone that kind of knew that, would help with setting the price. That's what
Well,
I'm
I
saying.
can't, let's just say, I went to Seth before I did all this stuff and started talking to him about what it was going on with it. I don't know if that,
Legal.
I don't know if it's appropriate. So, I mean, I'm not trying to, I kind of in that, when you're doing stuff, when you're selling city, I mean, you're selling school stuff and stuff, you're trying to be as fair and follow the law as much as possible.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. What they used to do is they would go to the Board of Realtors president.
Okay.
And that way, whoever sold the house was the sole realtor for the transaction. So it was open for anyone.
I mean, we can do it that way too. I mean,
So it would just get you guys more exposure and money.
I'm
you know,
totally-
so. Kevin and Steve, sorry, Steve.
Well, I've got a conflicting thought here with what Tracy said and what you just said. So, I was a member of the audience when this agreement came for these 3 lots, and it, as Tracy said, it was the city and the high school would split the profits. And twice tonight, you've already said, I don't try to make any money on the house. So I'm kind of confused. It was brought to the council that if the city gave the lots to the high school to use, they would split the profits. And I mentioned to an alderman and the mayor tonight, you know, if that was ever the case, as sitting here, I would want to donate what the city made back to the high school as a good faith effort. But then you're saying you're trying not to make any money. So
Well,
I'm
I mean,
kind of confused.
I mean,
To
when it comes
me,
to selling the house, excuse me, when it comes to selling it, I mean, what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to lose any money. I apologize if that's.
but you can't split the profits if you're trying not to make money either. So obviously, the system's broke somewhere if in a sealed bid process, the mayor's been in real estate since he was a young man and he knew nothing about the house being up for sale. He probably had a list of people that he could have, you know, told about giving a bid, and you only got one bidder. So to me, what's broken here is your whole sealed bid process. That needs to change, and the fact that you're saying you're trying not to make money, and the whole premise was that the profits would be split.
Well, when it came to the initial agreement, I did not, there was no input. No one called me or anything about the initial agreement. I was under the impression the agreement showed up at the high school and said, here you go, at our board meeting. I think we got it a couple of days before our board meeting. And I apologize for not having any input. I didn't know, I was still under the impression, because my superintendent at the time who was working on this for Lincoln High School, the superintendent at the time who was working on this was saying, well, they'll be getting us an agreement, they'll be getting us an agreement, they'll be getting us the lots. And once again, I'm not trying to say, you know, you're right, I would love to make money on these lots. I won't say that. But the problem is that the risk versus the reward. If I risk, if I could have somebody buy the house right now and not lose any money off of it, then it's fine. My budget's great. But if I go into the summer and I walk in here and then I list it, what you're saying, and we don't sell the house, well, how long do I keep it? I mean, I'm kind of in a scenario here with the school. I have a about $150,000 in reserve funds, and if I have a $120,000 house out there, I don't know how I'm gonna make payroll. So I mean, I hope as some business owners here trying to understand here, I have a limited budget here. I mean, everybody's looking at this is Lincoln High School scenario. No, this is Lincoln Technical Education Center scenario. It's under their budget that it's being done under. So that's why I'm trying to limit my risk. I mean, it's not, like I said, I can make money. I mean, I can try to go for the money on it, but at the same time if I lose the money on it, I think losing the money on it would be more detrimental to me than making. Because if I make, let's say, $20,000 off the house, let's say I build it for 110, we're able to sell it for 130. The city gets 10 and I get 10,000. Okay, well, what happens if I can't make payroll coming in? I gotta go borrow money from the high school or from a bank to keep my operation running until we sell this. I mean, I'm just throwing those things out there. I mean, those are the realities that I look underneath. I mean, once again, it's all hypotheticals and stuff, but I'm just trying to be able to sell the house as soon as somebody's interested and get rid of it.
Steve, Ron, Beth.
So just a quick question then, and maybe the mayor can help answer it. So what would be the approximate value of each of the lots? If you had to guess, I mean.
8 to 12,000.
12,000. So if you were to have 110 in it, and the lot is worth, let's say, 10,000, there's 120,000 right there.
I mean, the easiest way, not as your realtor obviously, but just in general, if you're concerned about sitting until it's done and then listing it, basically, you can put your property on the market subject to completion. You can market it however you want, and you can get it out there in the Board of Realtors as soon as possible. You know what I mean? So just from your perspective, you don't have to wait until that very end. People do that all the time.
With the sealed bid process?
You wouldn't be able to do that. So I said you have to talk to, to get Lincoln Land Technical Education Center the maximum for that property as soon as possible.
Well, I mean, that's because I believe I'm still I have to do the sealed bid process first.
Well, I think
And there might be 0 bids with the sealed bid process, and then we can list it through a local realtor, and everything's all good. But I have to go through the sealed bid process first.
Why do you have to do that? Where's that written?
I was gonna say, I mean, is that something you could go back to them and ask? Is this something you can reevaluate? Just.
I can have my superintendent ask the school lawyer and ask it if that's.
Previous houses were sold through the realtor, right?
They were sold through the board of realtors. So like I said, it wasn't one particular realtor, it was just in general, the board of realtors president.
And I apologize for not having it listed. At the time, that was my 2nd year on the job, so I didn't even know that was even a possibility. I asked how I listed this, and they said Facebook, and put it in the paper, and that's exactly how I rolled exactly what I was told.
Thank you, Mayor. So I give an apology on behalf of all of us to you. I know you came here, you were sent here tonight just to get permission.
I came here.
Well, and you probably didn't expect a barrage of questions.
No,
I
I expected.
But I think you see that we're not prepared to give this permission, and I would agree with those that have said this already. That I think we need to revisit this process, and perhaps maybe at a later time we can come back and do this in a proper way.
Thank you, Matt, for coming. I wanted to reiterate too what Alderman Keller said too. I think we need to go back and sit down and go over this. And I don't know if you have a copy of that, the rules on your sealed bid that you can look at.
I can get one for you. I'm fine on the process.
We can start there, and
I mean,
yeah, we should both be in here for a win-win on this.
And even if we don't get it approved for this month, next month, or whatever, I would like to move on it sometime in the spring. And that's going to still mean being sealed bidding it before. Because I mean, I'm looking at my fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th. So, and once again, I know it's arbitrary, but that's kind of the scenario I'm looking underneath. If not, I'll show a huge negative loss with no money. So anyway, I'll get the sealed bid information too. Would that be to you, ma'am?
Yeah,
Initially, and start talking to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Kathy Schmidt.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding, but if that property that we that money was lost on. If you had made a higher bid, if you put in a higher amount that would have covered your costs, and no one would have bid, then you could have put it out with the realtors and
Yes.
wouldn't that be the best thing to do?
Well,
Instead of going low and,
The thing I was worried about at the time was if no one was even giving us a bid, sealed bid before we put out the realtor. So we put out the realtor, then there was an additional realtor cost on top of this as well too, now we have to factor in. I don't know, what is that, 6%, sir, on average?
Those separate, but yeah.
Unless you want to cut me a deal.
But, and I think in the past, like Jeff said, I think some realtors that sold it did waive the commission, you know, so again, it depends on who sells the property, obviously, and what they're, you know, what you work out with them individually, but when I said earlier about Sherman Street, they did have sealed bid process, but they set the minimum higher, and then once it didn't sell, they listed it the next day
We can do
with the
that.
association.
And that's what we would do. I just was worried, at the time when we rolled, we only had one bidder. I mean, if I had multiple bidders, and I'd say, man, let me put this thing way too low, but with only having one bidder. And that was kind of, and that's what foretells me for this situation here. I'm afraid when I put it out, I may have 0 bidders to just one bidder. And that has historically been the case for the last several years.
Well, I think the flip side to that argument though is that by going out for sealed bid, you're only gonna be as successful as the people that see the ads that you're running in Facebook and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you end up working with a realtor, you're now part of a network and your house is available for any realtor to help you sell it. So I get what you're saying about the risk versus reward, but that might have been a risk worth taking. I don't know.
Any other further questions or discussion? You've been in the hot seat for a while.
I knew exactly when I was coming. And because I knew when I saw it, when I was reading the agreement. By the way, when I read the agreement, it's the first, other than the night we had the board, it was the last time I had read it, and I was sitting there, I was like, there'll probably be a lot of questions on this situation. That's why I tried to bring exactly what my costs were and exactly what money we got. And I'm also willing to definitely get the sealed bid process in the law. I just want to follow everything legally. That's another thing in the educational process. I got to make sure that everything is done by the book, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Steve, speaking of the hot seat, it's kind of hot in here. Real quick. Thank you. Moving down, we have a request to permit the display of a couple Lincoln Community High School Madrigal dinner banners within the city in visible places downtown and on Woodlawn Road from the period of early November 2019 to come down immediately after the last performance on November 24th, 2019. This was submitted by Kim Pearson Quinn, LCHS Choir Director. Peggy.
I talked to Kim, and she has 2 signs that she would like to put up. She thought maybe the Welcome Park there at the corner would be one place she would put. She mentioned Woodlawn Road, which I told her that's a state easement, that she could not do that. So she was trying to come up with someplace else that she could put the second sign. So as of right now, just basically the Welcome Park, unless you know of a place else that is city property that she could put the sign. I mentioned tourism, but not knowing if that's what she wants to do.
Steve and Beth.
So quick question, and maybe Kevin knows. So the ones that are put over the, let's say, Lincoln streets, advertising, pigsman's wigs or whatever it is that's going on. Who hangs those? Does the city hang those, or is that the entity that's asking?
Street and alley.
Street and alley. So would the street? Are they asking for street and alley to hang these?
I'm not taking your thunder, but Walt is indisposed tonight, so I just wanted that he left a note that once they have decided on the locations, should be approved by the street department. So, yeah, he'll decide.
He won't install them.
Well, if they're hanging, but I don't think she has the hanging kind. She said.
No, I think there's just signs that goes in the ground.
I'll give her permission where.
Kevin.
So if she wants to put one in the welcome party, it might be too close a proximity. I mean, she could ask to put one on the courthouse lawn, or I'm trying to think of lots that people pass by. I mean, that's pretty close together, though.
Which I told her if she would have to contact the county if she wanted the courthouse lawn, that would have nothing to do with us. And you know, there might be somebody, private property where she can, you know, that's a main drag that they would let her put it in. Yeah.
Chuck, you got a good yard.
Yeah, we've got lots of signs in those day yards.
Jeff?
I was just gonna suggest, like the boulevard, you know, on White Avenue, there's quite a bit of traffic
Yeah.
going down White Avenue.
Yeah.
So if they put it in the welcome park, though, tourism will have to give approval for that, correct?
I would
Since-
assume so,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I still think there's room, though, in the welcome park next to that sign, though. I'm curious about Woodlawn. What do you want to put on Woodlawn,
State easement.
So before we vote on this next week, can we get an idea from Ms. Peterson Quinn where she was thinking she would like the location?
Well, you weren't in the room.
I know, I'm sorry.
That was the only thing. I told her the welcome park and maybe tourism, it's, you know, the building itself, you know, in front of them. Or she mentioned Woodlawn Road, and I said, that's a state easement, she couldn't do that unless she found somebody, private property, that she could put her sign.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Or- Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to place this on the agenda? Okay. Got it. The consent or regular?
Consent.
Consent. Okay. Request by Logan County Tourism Bureau, Executive Director Morgan Gleason for the city to support the Lincoln Downtown Christmas Parade at a $500 sponsorship to assist in payment of the sleigh once again this year.
Put it in the consent agenda.
Okay, placing on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. We'll place that on the consent agenda. Request to offer proposals to purchase a solar panel system and its installation for the sewage treatment plant. Norm, Kevin?
Yes.
You guys need to decide on the language, whether or not the language that we had to change the RFP, so I think there was some language that you guys were looking at to determine whether or not that language is correct, and you would go ahead and approve it if it was.
I think Anthony and Kevin had worked on it, and the only thing left was the schedule. So if the dates can be updated, I think it's good to go, correct, Kevin?
Yes, last I heard several times ago, it was just changing the dates. And now it's just evidently became a procedural thing where we need to officially vote on it to go out for proposal.
Questions, discussion, place this on the agenda?
As long as what's in the packet next week has the updated schedule. Sure.
Updated dates, okay. Updated dates, we'll place that on the regular agenda. Norm?
What dates do we put on it, and who's actually entering that data? I mean, we can do it, I'm not sure who has that actual document.
Kevin?
Sean's done this before, so I will get with Sean and Anthony and Norm. Obviously, we'll be voting on November 4th, so we'll work on dates where it goes out sometime in November and dates where they come back, and then we'll just go from there.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, regular agenda. City Administrator's printer maintenance and laser cartridges, Beth?
Yes. You know, my printer that I got secondhand from the street department was breaking down, and then the cartridges were expensive. So I looked, and I spent quite a few months looking on trying to find a printer, so I found another HP all-in-one printer. And I was talking with Conica Minolta gentleman, and then he left the company, and so now we're a little bit behind, but they are agreeing to give me a $35 a month agreement for the cartridges will be provided, as well as maintaining my Hewlett Packard. And I think it's a really good deal. The cartridges that I had to order from the beginning, because the gentleman left and we didn't know when we get a person to replace, I had to go ahead and order a supply, and I took the amounts, the amount of copies per color per for cartridge and everything, and compared it to the other ones that I'd been using, and it came out to be exactly the same amount. I can't believe it, but, anyway, it would be, for the first year, it would be, $210 to finish out this fiscal year, and then the next, 3 years after that, it would be 420 and 420, and then drop down the last year to 210. So, I think it's a pretty good deal.
Questions or discussion?
Since it's an agreement, it needs to be on the agenda.
Steve?
Just a quick question. So it says $35 a month for 3 years. It says the first year 210, 420, and then
For the fiscal year, based on our fiscal year budget, sir.
so if we look at $35 a month for
6 months.
3 years, it says here.
No, those are stepping out.
The
Yes.
first year, we're 6 months in
6 months.
already.
Right.
So it's
Gotcha.
210.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's half of two different years, the first year and half of the fourth.
Okay.
Regular or consent?
Regular.
Regular, okay. Discussion regarding the city of Lincoln's legalized cannabis dispensary setback zoning. Okay.
So this would be step number 2. We voted to allow recreational sales. So in a conversation with the city attorney and some past practices, instead of trying to write one gigantic ordinance, I thought it'd be better if we brought it to the council in pieces so that we can have a thorough discussion on each section of the ordinance, and then when we get each section done, we would do the meat and potatoes of the ordinance, and John can fill in all them big legal fluffy words in between those pieces, and then we'll just pass one big ordinance. So tonight, the first section I'm bringing forward is the setback rules.
Mine says no device found.
That's because it's loading up. I should have done that while you were talking.
What I'm gonna bring forward here is the
Good job, Kevin.
This is the GIS map of the city. As you can see, the yellow portions, and I'll zoom in here shortly, is schools and churches. Our current liquor ordinance is the only thing I know that has setback rules. And those setback rules for the liquor ordinance are 100 feet. So in my thought process here is trying to incorporate the areas of the downtown and other zoning issues that would be part of the TIF district, which is very important to try to bring in more money for the TIF district. So in doing that, the first thing I'll do here is 100 feet, which is our current liquor ordinance for churches and schools. As you see, that applies to the city, and I'll zoom in on the downtown area because out on the edge of town, there's plenty of area out by the highway. So this would be your downtown area, where I have the mouse. As you can see down in this area, that's the courthouse square. These are, the blue is schools and the yellow is churches for 100 feet. So, and
Is the red and the blue surrounding the boxes the setback?
correct. The blue surrounding the boxes is 100 feet around school. The red surrounding the boxes is 100 feet around a church. So that's what our current liquor ordinance looks like. Again, does anybody want to see what out west looks like? There's only one church and one school. There's plenty of open space out by the highway. So, again, what I'm trying to bring forward here is the companies that are interested in building a dispensary, they're looking at properties to purchase or rehabilitate. And I'm not gonna hide anything here. I'm trying to make sure that the old Oasis is in play. That is a building that is an eyesore downtown, can be purchased at a relatively cheap price, and it desperately needs rehabilitated for the downtown area. So, in talking with some people, they thought that maybe schools should have a larger setback, so we can go into schools here and we can increase that. That is 300 feet, and as you see, it still brings all of downtown's, or most of downtown's zoning that would allow this dispensary into play. So at this point, any questions, or I can change the map, or?
Thank you, Mayor. To tag on to what Alderman Bateman said, just for perspective, of course, the state statute doesn't say anything other than 1,500 feet from another dispensary and 1,000 feet. You cannot advertise than 1,000 feet of a school, playground, recreational center, child care center, public library. And checking out other cities and what they have done in regards to zoning setbacks for dispensaries, the city of Aurora has proposed, and I don't think it's approved yet, but no farther than, 500 feet away from a school, and that's all they mention is a school. Dixon is 100 feet of a residential area, as well as a school, daycare center, park, recreation center, library, or church. And Bloomington actually just took this up, I think, last night, and it's 500 feet. So it seems to me, if we strike it down the middle, 100 feet, 300 feet seems to be reasonable to 500 feet.
I think it varies on the size of the municipality probably as well. But just keep in mind, the main crux of my comment here is that we'll likely be looking at an amendment to Title III business regulations, from which the adult use dispensaries cannabis use would be implemented. I'd be highly resistant to just adding hodgepodge, submitting for, let's say the setback and then just leave everything else blank. Okay, my recommendation is if the council wants to tackle these issues a one-on-one, we'll tackle them one-on-one, but the ordinance creating the actual what's going to actually be put in with the city code would be essentially to be, not to have a pun here, but set back or set off in regards to when it's finalized, because it still needs to go to the planning commission for the zoning, so that still needs to happen for when it will be zoned, either C1, C2, or whatever they decide to do. It's not my place. But having said that, so just the idea that the council wants to pass this, please don't expect that it would just be instantly implemented within the city code until everything else has been essentially dictated or agreed to.
And Steve?
Yes, that is the whole purpose of this in splitting it off, is that instead of trying to work one giant ordinance like we did the liquor night after night after night and then changing it, I thought we'd pick sections of the ordinance that has pertinence to it, and we could agree on it, vote on it, but if it's amended later when the one ordinance is, or as John said, it has to go to the zoning board of appeals, but at least we would have something that we would, if the council agrees 300 feet from a school, 100 feet from a church, then we'll move on to another section. Other sections coming forward would be fees and fines, hours of operation, and those kind of things. I just thought it would be easier to break it out into pieces and discuss each section of an ordinance thoroughly first before trying to pass one large one. I know that there will be amendments, as John said, and it still has to go through the zoning board of appeals But at least we would get a consensus from the council where we stand on setbacks.
See,
Mr. Attorney, do these have to be in place prior to the state picking the communities for these dispensaries licenses?
I think we would need to have something in place, before, we have to have some sort of rule set in place, before they can pick our community where they don't even know how we're gonna zone it.
No, I'm just asking the question, because I didn't want to do a bunch of work,
Right.
and then not get the.
Well, I think that if we do, as I understand it, okay, there's a limited amount, from which they will be allowed, okay? And that's just for the first round, so to speak. It's not gonna be just 3, at this juncture. At some point in time in the future, they're gonna allow another 3, and then another 2, and then I'm reasonably confident that the regulations will be become more lax as time goes on. In regards to how many there can be in a given area. We're in a very large area at this moment where they can only a very small, limited amount, because primarily I believe because this is such a new thing and they're getting off the ground floor, it's going to be much more manageable for them to highly monitor only a few and see how things go before they expand it. Having said that, it doesn't hurt our municipality having our rules set in place so that if they are, expanded or we are allowed for them, when they allow more, then we'll have our rules set in place for it.
My recommendation then, Kevin, can you put on there 300 feet for the schools as well?
That is 3, blue is.
I mean, for the churches, churches, sorry. Because it'd be my recommendation that we would do them both the same.
The thing you're noticing about once you go to 300 feet from a school is, I only know it as Life Point Church. I don't remember what it's called. No. The one over here at the old Courier building.
Sure.
That is right here where my mouse is. If you go to 300 feet there, you're eliminating nearly that entire block of Pulaski Street. You're eliminating an entire city block of commercial available buildings. If that's, I'm just,
I know.
it's just a vote. I'm just pointing out, if you look at the square and if you know the zoning issues, then that one church there eliminates a lot of it. So I can go 1,000. What I have built in here, as you see, is 100 feet, 300 feet, 800 feet, and 1,000 feet.
I think the churches would probably definitely appreciate keeping it the same with the schools. Because many of them have Sunday schools in there, they have plenty of children in there as well.
I understand, but the reason I picked 100 feet is because our current liquor license says 100 feet. That's the reason I chose 100 feet.
Kathy Schmidt and John. Unless you have one right.
And just to clarify, if there's an issue in regards, to the churches, again, this is expository dialogue here, but if there is an issue with the churches for which they're concerned that on Sunday that the church would be in service while potentially there are sales going on, well then that also comes back to the issue of the hours of operation. And I can understand the council may be having some hesitancy to vote on one issue without having the hours of operation issue also as well, kind of standing out there as well. If necessary, let's say the hours of operation could be on Sunday, or for a period, only for a limited period of time Sunday. There are a myriad of options that are available to this council.
Well, in regards to that, though, churches have children's meetings during the week as well, and sometimes early in the week, not even late at night, so that it's not just Sunday. But that wasn't my question. Oh, when you said about how things are gonna be more lax, in the rules and everything? They don't have to be lax if we don't allow it in our city, though, correct?
I think you misinterpret when I say lax. I'm saying like the regulations for observation, the regulations in regards to the monitoring aspects, those aren't going to come lax. When I'm saying that we're allowed 3 permits, in a given area, I think, over time, we're probably going to see 6 and then 12.
But as a city, can we say no more than 3? Or something like that, right?
Right, yes, we could say, we could definitely limit, how many are within our municipality. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bateman, Alderman Bateman, I noticed there's no differentiation there between way that things that are zoned commercial or residential. Is that, so with the way you have it set out there, that would permit, assuming state law permits this, would permit them to locate within a residential neighborhood as well? And maybe that's a question for the city attorney.
Wasn't that in the state? That's in the state statute,
I
correct?
think it is, and in further clarification with Wes, I think you had said C1, C2. No.
C2.
Just C2.
As it's written right now, it's written, it's only medical. There's no mention of recreational in the city code, so recreational or medical dispensaries can be in a C2, and medical dispensaries and cultivation can be in C2 or I1. There's no mention of any other.
I'll look at the state statute, I don't think there's any mention actually of it.
And I apologize, Mr. Conzo, nearly all of downtown is C2, I believe.
C1.
And
C1.
C1, and then there's industrial, and then out west is C1.
C2 and I1.
Yeah. So I just didn't put that overlay in there because it's just a small section of downtown where, as you can see, the churches and schools encompass the zoning issue, and then everything outside that's nearly all residential.
Sam?
So I'm looking at this map. It looks like we're already selling liquor right on top of these churches. Like, it's just kind of my thought that the liquor and the marijuana we should treat them the same. I mean, I'm not sold on this 300 feet thing. Me, I know I'm just one guy, but like I
that is your current liquor right there. So that's the reason I chose that. That's the current liquor ordinance.
Okay.
And we all know where the taverns and stuff are in this city. Now, again, the way every ordinance I know is written, if, for instance, this church again, I don't know the proximity to the glass. Well, it'd be more than 100 feet. If a church establishes somewhere after a liquor establishment or whatever, then they're within the 100 feet. You don't close that establishment down. So all I did was brought up the current churches and schools and then used the setbacks. And I want to, before I get done here, I'd like to thank Bill DeAndrea for helping me set this up. He does a great job.
I just feel that alcohol or the marijuana is no more dangerous than alcohol. So I feel like they should kind of both have the same set of rules.
I feel like there are a lot of people in this town that are totally against marijuana. And we brought it in, according to the people that wanted to bring it in, because money. So instead of trying to make it the best, we can just put it someplace that's not going to be around churches or schools or bother people in a residential area, and you've got what you want. What difference does it make?
I mean, I think the same thing applies. You walk out of some of these churches, you'll see 4 bars. If you don't want to go, you're not going to go. Same as marijuana. It's going to be there. If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. You know what I mean? You can walk out of a church and see paraphernalia on the ground. You can see beer bottles. It doesn't make you a drinker or a user. So, I mean, I guess it's just my perspective. Sam?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, and you just kind of took what I was gonna say. You don't have to go. It's not, no one's making anyone go. And I mean, we're not gonna have it right on top of the churches or schools or whatever. It's just, we're treating it the same way that we do the alcohol.
I think it's different.
The state doesn't treat it the same as alcohol.
Neither does the federal government.
There's no limited numbers of alcohol like you do with the marijuana coming from the state.
Not yet. Say the state's the one that just approved it.
Yep.
I mean, it's.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
but it's not equal.
It's also new to the scene. I mean, again.
And why is it new to the scene? Why aren't they treating it equal? Because there's so many unknowns. There's so many things that are still very much questionable.
I think the reality
so
is.
that is why. And hopefully we can have people from the community and some of the pastors, parishioners come up and talk to this council. As Alderman Schmidt had mentioned, many in this community doesn't even want it in here. And we had a 4-4 split and the mayor broke the tie.
Right.
And so I think this is still a hot topic discussions that need to go on with this as well. And so we can start these additional work that the city lawyer is going to be working on, and Kevin, and sounds like Ron is working on as well too. And so perhaps we just need to have more community members, pastors come in and share their views as well.
Why do we keep bringing churches into the? Why
brought it up? You brought it up.
I'm going by the liquor audit. I mean, there's going to sound. I'll be written about on Facebook. It doesn't matter. I don't go to church. So that doesn't make me a bad person. I don't go to church. But it seems like every time an argument's brought up, it's church, church, church. What about the people who don't go to church? What about the people who go to church that use marijuana? I know for a fact there's people that go to church that use marijuana. Got one sitting back there. I saw several when I was at the Christian church at Harvest Talents this week.
Let's get off.
I mean,
let's
And I think the reality is it's already been approved, so we're just trying to move forward, so that conversation's sailed. I mean, in all honesty, so we're talking now about these,
We're talking about an ordinance even around churches, so it's still part of the conversation.
But I'm saying it's already been approved, is what I'm saying. So that
I'm not talking about not being approved. I'm just talking about having an ordinance that's going to respect schools and churches both. Kevin brought it up.
But and I guess my perspective is they're going to walk 300 feet, they're going to walk 500. So where do you decipher where you draw that line?
Why we have 100?
What?
Why is there even 100 then?
It's just an option.
So Ron, did you say that there's nothing in the state laws about residential?
No. As far as what? As far as
Prohibiting it from being in a residential area?
I couldn't find it. I tried to do word searches and I couldn't find it. I'll look some more, but I didn't find anything about it.
I mean, it's probably a question that's more accurate for me, but I'd have to delve within the statute if you wanted more.
I'm on the Illinois State Statutes website.
I only brought churches. I had to have a reference point. So when I put setbacks into the city website, the only thing that came back with setback rules was adult centers, which goes straight down the line of what the state is, and we don't even have an ordinance for that, and alcohol. So I started with that. It's just a reference. So then I gave options to the council. We need to build an ordinance for this because we've already passed it. I'm not, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just bringing it forward. If you asked me to click on 300, I clicked on 300. Then all we got to do is come to a consensus and at one point bring it to a vote, decide what we're going to use for setbacks, and move on to the next section of ordinance. build the ordinance, then send that to the zoning board of appeals and see where they come back, and then we would vote on a completed ordinance. I just thought it would be much simpler after watching from the audience and then sitting here with the liquor ordinance to break it out into pieces where we can have a conversation on one evening of one section of the ordinance, or 2 evenings or whatever. So
no one's disputing the process, Kevin. No one's disputing whether you should break it out or not. I just happened to mention that I think we should do 300 feet around schools, it's churches as well as schools. That's all I mentioned.
I just want to put something up for a vote so we have a discussion, and I'm giving you options of what it looks like. So that's all I'm here doing. I'm not trying to force anybody into anything. You tell me what to click on and I'll click on it. If we feel like we can come up to a consensus where we got a vote and people feel comfortable voting, then we'll put it on next week's agenda and we can move on to the next section. If not, we can bring it up at the next COW and discuss it again. I can change the map at that point, or obviously I didn't think of the zoning issue like Mr. Conzo because I knew almost all of downtown is in it and almost all of out west is in it. Everything else is residential or industrial. So that's where I'm at.
Ma'am.
Okay, so I brought up 100. I think Steve was in favor of 300. Can we see 200? Is that an option on there?
No.
Can we meet somewhere in the middle?
I have 100, 300, 800, and 1,000. So I can just easily go back to schools and click on the 300 foot. As you can see, the darker blue stays in at 100, and there's 300, and that's 100 on churches.
Can you make it 300 for churches just so I can see it?
There's 300 for churches.
No, if we had 200, I don't think it would.
I think what you're getting at here is if you reduce it down to 200, it creates more possibilities within the TIF district.
Yes.
Because let's be real, the TIF district is going to need some support. We don't know what the future of that looks like.
And I'll be the first one to admit, and I even mentioned it to Seth, I mentioned it to Eli, I mentioned it to Ron. The Oasis is just, that's my thorn in the side of downtown. That was a beautiful building that burned, that fell into the hands of someone who didn't take care of it, and there it sits. So now it's for sale, it's in foreclosure. And the other there's other empty buildings in downtown. Unfortunately, they're all owned by one entity, or most of them are owned by one entity that's still in this bankruptcy that's causing our TIF problem. There's no guarantee that any dispensary would ever build downtown. I'm just trying to give them that opportunity so we can better the downtown area. Nobody's forcing anybody to go into a dispensary, but at least it would make use of a building, put it on a tax roll, and make it look better.
Do you know what the dispensary needed? I remember Eli said that he needed so much space and so much parking. I don't remember what that was. Do you know if
2,000 square feet.
Okay. Do you know if the Oasis would work for him?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
I just think there's a lot of people in this town that don't think a marijuana dispensary downtown would make the town better. Maybe you haven't talked to them, but I have, so. I'm gonna put that out there.
I think the unfortunate part for all of us here is that we have to figure out what works for the whole community, not just a section of the community. So, and I've heard it multiple times tonight, and I agree with you guys. There are many people that don't want it. But on the flip side, there are many people that do.
Amen.
So we gotta find common ground here. And we're not pinpointing where these people are gonna set up. We're just creating opportunities and not restricting them so tight that we shove them way back in a corner. We don't do that with any other business, and I don't think we should do it for this business. It's one location. So if we are that passionate about this topic, we have other opportunities available to restrict the number that come into this town and the hours of operations and things of that nature. As the mayor already said, it's already been voted on, so we know that it's been approved. If somebody can even get a license to operate in this town. Now let's figure out how to find some common ground.
Okay, so how are we moving forward with this? Are we gonna bring it back up, or are we, Kevin?
My only suggestion is, if the council is comfortable on voting on just this section, we can put it on next week's voting agenda. We can always table it. I'm not a kick the can down the road guy, so I don't want to just keep tabling it over and over again. But all we would have to do next week is use this map. We've got, you know, what the state has said, and just put it to a vote of the distance of the setbacks. Either we mirror alcohol, or we do something different with schools versus churches or whatever, or we set it at 0 setbacks. It doesn't, it's just a decision we need to make, and then we can move on to the next section. Like I said, there's fines and fees we gotta work on, there's hours of operation we gotta work on. The 2 companies that have contacted me both said it's retail. 10 to 10 is what they usually operate. Some of them don't operate long hours on Sundays. They both said that the operations they have are open on Sundays, but they don't operate the same 10 to 10. It's not late night. It's not early in the morning. It's just a retail store like any other retail store. So I was just trying to come up with a way to offer buildings in the downtown area. Let's face it, they probably want to build out by the highway like everybody else does. I'm just trying to give them opportunities if they want to invest in the downtown. That's why the setbacks, to me, I would not vote for anything over 300 feet, because it just, I mean, I can click on it right here if you'd like to see what, if you'd like to see what 800 feet looks like. That's 800 feet were both. We just wiped out all of downtown.
Go back to 300 and hone in on the downtown, please.
300 for both?
Yes. 300 for everything, and
there's 300 for both.
Zoom in.
As you can see, I'm trying to put the downtown square, the courthouse, right in the middle of the screen.
That's 300.
That's 300 for both. Obviously, out west by the highway, you have, and it escapes me, I don't know the name of it, there's the church out by Examus.
Church of the Nazarene.
Yeah, and then there's West Lincoln Broadwell. That's your 2 schools out west.
Zion Lutheran.
Zion Lutheran.
John?
So you guys just need to decide as to what kind of setback you want to put on for voting. And to be honest, if you put something on there and you guys don't pass it, then we'll come back at it at a later date for a different setback to put on there. So we just need to put something on there for you guys to vote on.
So, my pet peeve or kryptonite or whatever you want to call it, right here where my mouse is, that's the Oasis.
And that's with a 300
So
foot.
300 foot, according to Will, put it right up against the wall.
So set it at 250.
So, as Tracy said, I can't set it at 250. 50 feet would be off of that. As you can see where the dark circle is, that's 100. So the dark circle around that church on the corner is 100 feet. The lighter red is 300 feet.
Make it 200. I think Sam or someone said it. Hey, even though you can't put it on the screen.
Again, that still gives ample opportunity for a lot of, if you're looking at 300 feet, that also, the library sits inside that 300 feet, so, and the park. I'd have to zoom back out to show you where Latham Park, Latham Park would be open. I mean, you know, I don't know if you want to set, unfortunately, the city of Lincoln is just set up weird with the way our parks are and stuff. Some of our zoning issues take a lot of things out of play.
So for the sake of time, I'd make a recommendation that we vote on a setback of 250 feet.
Okay, yes, so Chuck?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a procedural question, I guess, for the city attorney. Would this be an ordinance that would be voting on, or it would just be an agenda item?
It'll be an ordinance.
It would, so that would be.
It'd be part of
First
paragraph of them.
Right. It'd essentially be an ordinance indicating what we're looking to do in regards to this, but, you know, and then what I would do at the end when I create the ordinance that would essentially effectuate the whole amendment to the, presumably Title III, I would be making references back to these other ordinances that were passed in regards to, like, say, the setback and the, you know, hours of operation, things of that nature. Tax, yes, and the tax as well, which has already been passed.
Okay, so on the regular agenda, 250 feet setback. Kevin?
So just a nod here, at the next cow, what section would you like to discuss? Hours of operation? Or do you want to lump fines and fees in with hours of operation? I think fines and fees, you got how much it's going to cost for a permit, the fines if they break any of the rules.
Let's do an easy one. The number that are allowed.
The number of dispensaries around, I'm gonna go on record and say I don't want no more than 2. I believe in competition, but I don't believe in a monopoly. So I don't want to limit it to 1, but I don't want to make it more than 2.
I didn't make that proposal to open that up for discussion here. I proposed that we do that next time.
I just know somebody's going to think I want 40.
Well, we can have that discussion at another time. I'm trying to wrap this up.
Okay, so again, on next week's regular agenda, 250 feet setback.
Yep.
Between church, for church and school. Okay.
And before we move on there, can you work with Will and get 250 put into there and then provide what that looks like to everybody prior to next week, please?
Yes, 250 feet will be available on the big screen next week.
For the sake of argument, have him throw 200 in also.
Okay.
Okay, moving down, Fish Street Road, Beth.
I don't know if we need to go into executive session on this stuff. We've got it to go in, I think that's maybe what we need to do. I just wanna let you know we're moving along. Every parcel's been touched. Our 60-day eminent domain letter went out and it was 60 days, expired October 23rd. And within that time, we've got activity going. So, I don't know what you want to do as a council, but we are moving on these things, and I must have done something to get some things moving. But we're in all kinds of stages. So, we do have a meeting coming up later in the month of November. That's as soon as we could get with them, with the representative who is representing the Union Pacific Railroad to talk about some railroad issues that railroad bed. So anybody would like to hear about all that, come see me because it's kind of detailed and we have all that kind of time tonight to talk about it. But things are moving along.
Tracy?
Beth, can we get a digital copy of this updated to show progress made this past week?
Yes, I started, but I thought maybe we'd go into executive session and tell you real briefly. But yes, there goes my cartridges.
Yeah, I think since this is kind of a living, breathing project,
sure,
having a point in time would be nice to have. I also have another question. So, and I guess it's been on my mind and I haven't said anything. So we're paying Hanson to do land acquisitions, but it seems to me that you're doing a lot of the coordinating and facilitating and getting people together and sending letters out. That seems like all the type of stuff that contractor should be doing on behalf of the city. So have we had a discussion with them to talk about costs? Because if you're doing their work, we shouldn't be paying the full cost of the agreement.
I agree. I think it's been more like we are moving them along a little faster, but Hanson is the one that did the design work. And what slowed some of this down was when we decided to remove the bike path from the design. She had to go back in and change a few. So we have been able to drop out on two definitely, one, well, probably a third one we will tell.
Yeah, that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is they were tasked with getting the landowners to the table and coming up with a reasonable negotiated rate for the property. And it seems to me, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but it seems to me like you're the one doing that. But we're still paying a contractor to do that piece of it. I know they're doing the design and stuff, but they were also supposed to be doing the land acquisition.
You are correct in some of that. They are doing a lot of the appraisal part and doing more, well, I'm doing some of the legal part too, but they're doing most of that. But I think it comes down to where people just generally don't want to work with outsiders. You know what I'm saying? These two firms are from Springfield. And so I've kind of been an intermediary. And then we've had aldermen step in and help out with witnesses. So it's whatever the council wants me to do.
So two things. One, I mean, if they need a local person to do it, they should be there with you, because we did pay a contract for them to be doing the work. And I'm just kind of curious as to, I mean, they may be with you, I don't know 100% of the time, but I'm not for sure how many hours you're putting into this, where before, you know, the city didn't have much of involvement. So it's taken time from your schedule to be working on other things that is needed from the city, which we've been paying them to do this. And granted, a lot of work's been done since an involvement and more involvement within the city and even the aldermen and such. But maybe they need to lower some of their cost or do something different, because it seems to me it's taking a lot of your time.
Okay. You know, the council's decision. I'm just letting you know we're almost really moving along here, but the council's decision. I understand money's involved, so.
I just remember being at that county meeting at the city, and they hadn't done anything, and nothing was moving, and since you plugged in here, it's gone, so.
We want
A
to
local
thank you.
person, I think that's what it is. People can relate to that.
We want to thank you for doing everything done really well there.
I have another question. If we sent out the 60-day eminent domain letters, and that 60 days is up,
Yes.
are we gonna do anything about it, or was it just a letter?
Well, it was kind of the catalyst to get things going, and it has. Every piece of property now is being moved. We're doing some things.
Having said that, now that the 60 days has passed, we have given the people the requisite notice that, you know, eminent domain proceedings, you know, would commence. And the farther we get from that, the more people will start to drag their feet again when they think that they didn't have any teeth.
I agree with you, but I don't think that's the case. We're dealing with IDOT. Things have to go through IDOT for their approval. We had to go wait for the redesign from the bike path removal, so that took several weeks. We've had to go back and do a reoffer on temporary easements now. We've got 7 properties that have to have that done. And so every piece of property is either completed or it's being touched. It's in different phases. So I'll put that digital together and send it to you. Thing is, I had to go get special paper to get this printed out. So I'll just send it to you and you'll have to look at it that way. It's fine. Digitally, that's fine.
I just have a question. So I understand what you're saying, but is there anyone that's not moving at all? And, okay.
Yes, no, even the gentleman that we just could not reach, he's reached out, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question regarding the reimbursement. As you know, the ones that have been settled, we pay for motor fuel tax fund. I understand there's, you know, and there has been years back when some of these were acquired, we received reimbursement from the state of Illinois. That hasn't happened in a couple of years. Is there some delay in that because of typically the way the state pays its bills, or is it?
Could be that, could be a combination of the way the city wasn't, I'm losing my voice, so I'm sorry. It's the way the city wasn't moving, you know, hadn't moved for years on this, it seemed like. Now we are, so I think that we're just delayed.
Yeah, but I mean, there are,
But
I
would
mean, some of
check
these
on
are
it.
3
Yes.
years back.
I understand, yes.
Any other discussion on that? Announcements? Yeah.
I am still seeking donations for a wheelchair swing project for Postable Park. So if anyone knows of any charitable organizations, please have them contact me.
Yes, sure.
Or what is that? I'm sorry.
A wheelchair swing at Postable Park.
I'll ask you that. I've had several people call me or come to me and ask about the way the square looks in regards to that boarded up window there next to Sorrento's and down that block. I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but it's really, there are other eyesores, I suppose, but that's really an eyesore, that boarded up window. Is there anything we can do to have the city fix it and then charge them?
What?
No, the glass has been ordered 3 times wrong.
3 times?
It's been delivered incorrectly 3 times.
Okay.
Wrong, so they're waiting on the glass to come
Okay.
back in. I've talked with the owner several times.
Thank you.
If you guys remember, I mentioned a while back that International Paper was willing to, they were going to donate $1,000, and they chose to donate it all to the DARE program. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that. The officer was thrilled about that, and they had red ribbon. This was this week, I believe. They had the ribbon ceremony on Monday, so just to make sure everyone knew about that. And then there's been a topic that's all over Facebook and calls and texts and emails, and I'm going to bring it for you guys to decide. Trick or treat hours. Everyone is all in arms about this. Do you want to leave it?
Keep it the same.
Just saying what I asked you guys. So
Same.
they're worried about the weather.
Yeah, the issue
Because
is
some of the surrounding communities have
Pulaski's
changed. And,
delayed it till Friday, Elkhorn's delayed it till Friday, other towns have delayed it till
I
Friday.
mean,
But that's just.
I used to like trick or treating in the snow. So
Yeah, I talked to Chris Miller out at the weather station yesterday on the phone because I had some questions about it. So people can expect tomorrow night or Thursday night it's going to be raining. It's going to be in the low 20s, and there's going to be 30+ mile-an-hour winds. Perfect trick or treating weather. So, but I did get some messages today, and they have valid points that changing it will cause confusion. It won't get out to everybody. So changing it at this point.
parents have the evening off.
Yeah.
You know, and they
Very big
arrange for
Friday.
that. People arrange to hand out candy as well. But I want to say I asked the council. So you guys wanting to leave it?
Yes.
So we'll remain Thursday night Halloween from 5 to 8 p.m. Okay. And Tracy.
I have one follow-up question, since we haven't heard about this topic in a while. The $50,000 that came from RDOT, do we know where we're at with those safety improvements?
They came back and asked for more information, so we had to get some information from Norm and Sean and Anthony on the, I can't pronounce it, was the photo, whatever, something of the VGDs, or what were those things called? VMDs or? VFDs, thank you. And so we had to do that, we submitted that, and then also they asked for more information from Walt. Now Walt would like to know if we're going to get the money up front before we invest in all this, or if they're going to reimburse us. Up front would be better, but, so we're waiting for the answer.
There's a good, we'll pay you later.
We've submitted it in the right amount of time, we're just waiting for them to go forward.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Are there other announcements? Yep, that.
Make a motion to go into executive session under 2C1 personnel and 2C11 possible or potential litigation.
Second. Mr. Ross made the motion, Mr. Keller seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
8:45, we will go into executive session. There will not be city business. Thank you.
No, actually, I was trying to bring that up.